Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at some very fun battles in the Open Ultra League featuring a brand new build for me, and that is going to be Galarian Weezing. But we're not just running any moveset on Galarian Weezing. Today we are running Hyper Beam. Galarian Weezing is a Poison and Fairy type Pokemon with the moveset of Fairy Wind, Brutal Swing, and typically your choice of Play Rough or Overheat. But today we're running it on the safe switch and we're running Hyper Beam to try and cause some mischief. So without further ado, let's open the matches and check out Hyper Beam Galarian Weezing in the Open Ultra League. Nightmare lead in the first match, Como-O into Alolan Ninetales. I save switch into Galarian Weezing and my opponent responds with Shadow Swampert. So we've lost lead and we've lost swap here. They go for the Hydro Cannon and I make it to the Hyper Beam. Do they respect the damage? They do not! Massive damage onto the Swampert, and Galarian Weezing will be able to commit a shield. The Fairy Wind will KO, and just like that, we now have switch advantage. In comes an Ampharos, and Ampharos will be met with the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing will be no-shielded. I send in Como-O. Como-O farming up. In comes the Ninetales, but now Ninetales is going to have to deal with Nihilego. Nihilego, a Pokemon not typically seen played in the Open Ultra League due to the fact that it is somewhat limited in its coverage, but we're running a bit of a spicy team, so we're gonna have some fun with it. Psyshock will be shielded, that would hit for massive super effective damage, and we get the farm down with Nihilego. Nihilego will be hit with the charge move from the Ampharos. Ampharos goes for the Thunder Punch. I'm going for the Sludge Bomb, but I end up lagging a turn, and I do not get the move. This is not good. If they have Focus Blast, they can probably win this. Moment of truth, they do not have the Focus Blast, and we secure the win. Hopping into the next match, sending Como-O into Jellicent. This is not a bad matchup whatsoever, very neutral across the board. The nice thing is I am able to outpace in this matchup, but my Dragon Claws are obviously not going to hit as hard as something like a Shadow Ball from the Jellicent. I'm able to win the CMP tie here. Dragon Claw is going to connect, and they do have well over the Shadow Ball, so I will commit the shield. My opponent baits me with a Surf. That is absolutely awful for me, and now this will be the Shadow Ball. I don't want to go down 2 shields to 0, so I'm going to let that through and farm up to 2 more Dragon Claws. Now my opponent has the double shield if they want switch, so they're just going to let that go. They send in Cresselia. I pivot into Weezing, and in the back is Gliscor. Gliscor typically doesn't really have to fear anything from Galarian Weezing, but we have the Hyper Beam. That's massive damage onto the Gliscor. Gliscor, very nice over farming, and they will be going for the Earthquake. I'm going to commit the shield here because I know that I can get a shield back with the Brutal Swing. My opponent does not want Brutal Swings on the Jellicent, so they will commit a shield on the Gliscor. Gliscor farms up, but they lose CMP to the Weezing, and now they're going to have to give up both shields. That is quite nice for me. Earthquake is going to be lethal, but I managed to get both shields from my opponent, and hopefully that should make this game a lot more manageable. I send in Como-O. Back in comes Cresselia. If they have Future Sight, I just lose here. Do they have it? They do not. It's just a Grass Knot. And Grass Knot only hits for neutral in this matchup, so hopefully that means Nihilego can do okay in this endgame. I'm firing off the Rock Slide. That's going to connect onto Cresselia. Cresselia going for another Grass Knot here. Grass Knot is going to get Nihilego quite low, and they can threaten to farm down. Nihilego will be able to make it to the Rock Slide. This will not KO, but it will hopefully put them in a range where a Dragon Claw will be lethal. In comes Como-O. I'm able to win CMP over the Cresselia. Dragon Claw will be lethal. The question is, can I live the wing attacks? Como-O, with a sliver of HP, makes the last second Dragon Claw, taking out the Gliscor, and that's a good game. Picking up a neutral lead in the next match, Como-O into Virizion. I do want to check for any ground types lurking in the back, so I'm going to farm up 3 and look to catch a Sacred Sword onto my Weezing, but my opponent shows great patience, and in comes Charizard. Now Charizard typically can comfortably no-shield whatever is thrown here, but again, we have Hyper Beam, and that is going to hurt. Charizard firing off a Blast Burn here. Blast Burn is not going to KO. XL Galarian Weezing is extremely tanky, and now I can make the Brutal Swing and force a shield or switch advantage. My opponent is going to let that through, and they're going to send back in Virizion. Virizion looking for the aggressive farm down, and unfortunately I cannot make another Hyper Beam here. My opponent recognizes that, and they're going to let that through. So I have one switch advantage, which is quite nice, but unfortunately this Virizion is leaving with 100 energy. Virizion is going to be spamming out Sacred Sacred Swords in this matchup, and Sacred Sword does quite a lot of neutral damage to Nihilego. They're going for Sacred Sword number 2 onto Nihilego. Thankfully, the poison jabs are hitting for super effective damage as well. I will start shielding. I'm looking for the farm down here. Nihilego cannot get the farm down. Virizion makes a last second charge move, and I have to give up my final shield. In the back, it's a Shadow Wall Rain. Wait. This is winnable. I have energy on Como-O, and I have double Rock Slide here. Rock Slide number 1 gets the shield, and I'm going for Rock Slide number 2. This will hit for massive super effective damage. Opponent lets it go, and now I just have to try and commit to the farm down with the Como-O. I'm not going to make double charge moves. I need the Dragon Tail damage. Wall Rain with 1 HP remaining makes it to the Icicle Spear. That's going to KO Como-O, and it ends in a tie. Picking up a very nice lead in the next match, Como-O into Swampert. Considering what I have in the back, I am thrilled to see Swampert on the lead. Swampert will be outpaced here as Como-O will make a potential close combat before they get to the Earthquake. I'm baiting with the Dragon Claw, and my opponent calls the bait. Very nicely done by my opponent. I do need to preserve Como-O to make sure I can get rid of the Swampert, so I will shield up the Earthquake. I'm looking to massively overfarm with Como-O here, and this Dragon Claw will be lethal. Opponent will commit the shield. They are wanting to try and get rid of the Como-O. I elect to save my final shield here. Earthquake will connect. I send in Galarian Weezing, and it's a simultaneous save switch. Weezing into Shadow Snorlax. Weezing is going straight for the Hyper Beam once again. Big damage onto the Shadow Snorlax. Snorlax has farmed up a ton of energy here. Snorlax, do they have an Earthquake? They do not. It's going to be the double Body Slam. Body Slam number 2 is going to be getting the Weezing quite low. The question is, can Weezing make the Brutal Swing? It's going to be close. Weezing able to hang on. This is a very high rank XL Weezing, and Brutal Swing will KO the Snorlax. In the back, it's a Shadow Alolan Muck, and this is honestly not a bad spot to be in as Nihilego. I'm just looking to massively overfarm. Opponent goes for the catch, and they fail the catch. I'm going to fire off the Rock Slide. They have so much energy on the Muck. I'm going to try for a catch myself. I throw 1 switch into the Como-O, and I fail the catch as well. I'm going to let this go. Their win con is Acid Spray baiting. They go for the Dark Pulse, but as you're going to see, Dark Pulse is not enough to KO. And they can now go for an Acid Spray and try and farm down, but I will be able to make it to the back-to-back Rock Slides here, and that should secure victory. Rock Slide number 1 gets them low, and with the back-to-back loaded here, this will be big overkill, taking care of the Shadow Alolan Muck, and securing the win. A tough lead returns in the next match, Como-O versus Alolan Ninetales. Same game plan as before, save switch into Galarian Weezing, but this is actually a Powder Snow Alolan Ninetales. Opponent sends in Shadow Charizard. You already know what's next. Big damage with the Hyper Beam. Let's go. I'm going to shield the Blast Burn here. This is a Shadow Charizard, so a Blast Burn would actually threaten to KO. And now, I can just Fairy Wind farm down. I leave with so much loaded energy. Opponent sends in the Ninetales, and I am not baiting. Going straight for the Beam. Beam will be shielded. Opponent has learned to respect that damage. Weezing has done its job, so I'm not going to be shielding it again. Weather Ball will get me low, and unfortunately, they will get a farm down. I do not make another beam. I'm forced to settle for the Brutal Swing, and Brutal Swing, non-stab, and resisted. Not going to do a whole lot. In the back, there is Cobalion, and this is a bit of a tricky situation, as Cobalion has an energy lead, and with an energy lead, they can beat Como-O. I believe my win con here is going to involve going for a Dragon Claw bait. This is going to be close. I'm going for the bait here. I need them to shield. Dragon Claw gets no shielded by my opponent. And unfortunately, that will spell game over for me. Como-O will make the close combat. So if they shielded, I could have won. But my opponent read me like a book, calls my bait, and I concede the match. We see a neutral lead in the next match, Como-O into Dragonite. I'm going to throw 4 Dragon Tails and try and catch onto Galarian Weezing, and I do get the catch. This is massive. I waste their energy while I get to save mine for later. My opponent sends in an XL Lanturn. We've got the battle of XL Pokemon. They're going to fire off a Surf here. I'm going to let this through, and I'm going to fire off the Hyper Beam. Hyper Beam, not going to be able to one-shot XL Lanturn. XL Lanturn is very bulky, but it will still deal a sizable amount of damage. I continue to farm with the Weezing. I make a Brutal Swing, but Brutal Swing will be non-lethal here. My opponent will be able to let this through, and the nice thing is, I would make another Brutal Swing, so they are forced to throw their energy. This will set up extra energy for Como-O, which is nice, because I already have a nice energy lead over the Dragonite, if that's what they decide to send in. And it is, they send back in the Dragonite, but it's met with the loaded Dragon Claw. That gets a shield from the Dragonite, aggressive pivot into Nihilego, and it's Shadow Ampharos in the back. And I'm going for the Rock Slide here. Rock Slide will hit for some solid chip damage if they let it through, which they do. And the Poison Jab goes through, and this will be game. As I can shield, they go for the Brutal Swing. The Poison Jab KOs. In comes the Dragonite, and they concede the match. Picking up a great lead in the next match, Como-O into Registeel. Considering my back Pokemon with the movesets they're running get absolutely destroyed by basically every Steel type, it is very, very nice to catch the Regi on the lead. I can tank whatever they throw here. Opponent baits with a Zap Cannon, looking for an attack debuff, and I'm going to return fire with the Close Combat. The nice thing is, I do get to the Close Combat whenever they make it to the Focus Blast, so I will always be able to either CMP tie or outpace in this matchup if they go for a Zap Cannon. Close Combat will KO. I'm looking to switch. In comes Deoxys, and I'm going to send in Galarian Weezing. Opponent makes a very nice catch, catching that Brutal Swing onto a Shadow Alolan Sandslash, and Sandslash is a massive core breaker for this team as it hits the entire team for super effective damage. Brutal Swing number 2 is going to connect. I continue to farm up, and my opponent farms a bit too much, and they play to a CMP tie that they do not win. Brutal Swing is going to get a shield from my opponent, and you know what? I decide to shield back. I know that my Weezing is very spammy, and I just need to try and get shields down if at all possible, so maybe I can KO with a Rock Slide from Nihilego in the endgame. Drill Run will be shielded. I'm looking to farm up. Opponent sends in Deoxys looking to catch a move, and they do catch not an Overheat, but a Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing is going to connect, and it looks like that was a CMP tie versus the Deoxys. Brutal Swing is going to connect. The Deoxys is Switch Lock, so if they Psycho Boost, they're now going to be 2 stages debuffed. They Rock Slide, so they don't get debuffed, but now I'm just going to send in Nihilego. Nihilego looking for the farm down here. Deoxys firing off a charge move. It's the Psycho Boost. That does so much damage. Nihilego gets the farm down, and I leave with a Rock Slide. This will be grabbing the final shield from the Sandslash. Sandslash needs a perfect overfarm to win this game. Sandslash overfarms a bit too much. Nihilego winning CMP, taking out the Sandslash, and that's a good game. Our nemesis returns in the final match, Como-O versus Alolan Sandslash, but this time it's a Shadow. As I mentioned, Sandslash basically destroys this entire team, so seeing one, unfortunately, is typically just going to be a loss. They will fire off the Ice Punch. I'm going to let that through, farm up, go for a bait of a Dragon Claw, and I'm very happy that I baited as my opponent catches it onto a Giratina. The good news is, I have a Pokemon that absolutely destroys Dragon Breath Giratina, and that is my Galarian Weezing. Weezing is of course going to be double resisting these Dragon Breaths, and Ancient Power just does not do a lot of damage. I'm firing off the Brutal Swing. This will not be enough to one-shot. Opponent will be able to hang on, so I'm going to look to overfarm as much as possible and go for the Brutal Swing right before they make their next charge move. This will be lethal, and I do leave with a lot of residual energy, which is very important, because if they send back in the Sandslash, which they do, I can pressure shields with the threat of an Overheat. Brutal Swing into the Sandslash will be shielded as I did have enough energy for the Overheat. Opponent is going to return fire. They bait with the Ice Punch, but I'm fine with shielding because again, if they feared the Overheat once, I can overfarm quite a bit and they're probably going to respect it again. And my opponent is going to double shield. They're firing off another charge move. At this point, they can just go straight Ice Punch. I'm low enough. But again, I look to threaten an Overheat. They try and catch onto their final Pokemon, which is revealed to be Gliscor. So my opponent is running a pretty cool team, so props to them for that. Liquidation connects. They lower my defense, but I will make it to the Sludge Bomb, and Sludge Bomb is going to hurt. Nihilego, Sludge Bomb, gets Gliscor low. Gliscor leaves with a sliver of HP, but with some energy. I send in Como-O. I actually intentionally don't throw a Dragon Tail there because I want to get KO'd. Unfortunately, my opponent recognizes that, they undercharge, and I'm forced to get rid of them so I don't take any damage on the Weezing. I have the back-to-back Brutal Swings here. Brutal Swing number 1 connects, and we win CMP with Brutal Swing number 2. Against all odds, we actually defeat a Sandslash, and that's a good game. All in all, I did have a lot of fun running Hyper Beam Galarian Weezing. If you're going to run XL Galarian Weezing, however, I would definitely recommend against the Hyper Beam. It can be fun for one-shots, but if you're looking to climb, running either Play Rough or Overheat will end up being a lot more consistent of a moveset. As to the team as a whole, the team was a lot of fun. It's definitely a spicier team, so it's not necessarily a team that I recommend for climbing, but it was fun getting to use Como-O again, as Como-O definitely does feel underrated. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is absolutely incredible. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.